I gotta admit, I'm confused. We live in a world where pretty much anything you post online through most social media network platforms is fact checked. When I upload this video, YouTube will scan through it just looking for any copyrighted content on the first place. And I understand that because that's for monetary reasons. Since I'm not monetizing this channel, I really don't care. And because it's not monetized, at least not by me, most of the places that when I use copyrighted or other people's intellectual property, they don't give me any crap. What is interesting is how many things they tell me if I quote something or show a clip from something that, well, you can't monetize this. It's like, I see people do it all the time. It's called news channels. But we live in a world where everyone is obsessed with the proper dissemination of information, where they're concerned that maybe you're getting information that's unreliable or from the wrong source. These are usually people who don't post sources themselves and post stuff and then just hope that the fact checkers don't catch them. But the most interesting thing about the fact checkers, there's two really interesting things about the fact checkers. The fact checkers will fact check jokes. So, if I post something up that's flagrantly just supposed to be funny and I know it's not true, they feel the need to fact check that as if people are so stupid that they can't tell the difference between truth and a joke, which tells me that's how they feel, and that's why they're putting that label on their thing so that people will know that they're not kidding, which is kind of childish. Second thing is, they're obsessed with fact-checking all sorts of asinine banalities. They'll check memes, or memes if you prefer, because that's not how you pronounce it, but that's how many people say it. They will fact-check little short videos, but notice that they never fact-check anything on TikTok, probably because it's a Chinese website, and so our fact-checkers aren't allowed to fact-check it unless you repost TikTok content somewhere else. And that although they're all obsessed with getting down to the truth and the bottom, they are absolutely against fact-checking whether or not you have a right to vote and that the votes that were cast were correct. And this is a very interesting thing because there are different grades and valuations of facts and information. There is information that is important. There is information that is urgent. There is information that is relevant. Then there's information that's correct, but not relevant at all. Like what kind of cereal I had this morning. Remember back in the day when people would post photos of what they ate? I mean, thank goodness there was no fact-checking back then because that's just stuff that's irrelevant. But one of the most important things, the most transformative things in a democratic society such as ours, something that Democrats claim to be obsessed with preserving the integrity of, there's no one out there fact-checking or arguing that there should be fact-checking going on when it comes to voting. The other thing they won't fact-check and verify is immigration. So you have these people who, on the one hand, are obsessed with checking facts, but don't check some facts. And the facts they don't check are some of the most important and transformative things in our society. This is not because I know what the facts are. This is just food for thought to ask why. For instance, I went to a special session for my homeowners association meeting yesterday, and one of the board members had right next to him on the table this gigantic box of records from the previous management company that's no longer has the contract to oversee the day-to-day activities of our association. And as I was presenting my case for why they're wrong, because they are, that doesn't mean that I'm 100% right, but they're definitely in the wrong. He said, well, I have copies of this and this and this, and presented all these papers and said, well, I don't have a copy of the paperwork that says you have permission to landscape your house the way you do. I said, isn't that convenient that the thing we're discussing you can't find, but you can find all of this other crap? You have every letter that was ever sent to me except that one. How convenient. And it just begs the question why. And this is not to slander them or libel them, and that's why I haven't mentioned any names or anything, or where I live or any of that stuff, because this is just a personal illustrative point of, it's interesting that You keep meticulous records and obsess over facts, except for the ones that interest me the most, except for the ones that establish whether or not I have a legitimate case or concern, and you only have the ones that I'm not bringing up. And it takes a level-headed person like the management company's associate to say, this is actually an issue about a particular thing, not general sweeping generalizations. Now, the problem is that with a HOA board, as with elected government, is it's very difficult to hold those people accountable. And once they're in, they have the ability to do whatever they like until they are either investigated or replaced. And in the case of my HOA presidency, I can't replace them because as long as you have fines on your record, you can't run for office. So there's nothing I can do. It's the equivalent of, I guess, being a felon because I have a vote, except I can't be an official. So, and when we have elected officials, they're the ones who determine what gets discussed, who determine what the facts are. And so the question is not whether or not we're getting facts. It's about which facts are we not getting? Why are you obsessed about certain facts and not others? And these are the questions that need to be asked and the questions that need to be answered, because that will tell us, number one, about the agenda, because I wonder about the agenda of the members of my homeowners association governing board, just like I wonder about the agenda of the current administration. And before you get your panties in a wad and get yourself all mixed up in that, remember that Hillary Rodham Clinton said we have a right to debate and disagree with any administration. So if they do, then I sure as hell do too. And then just asking questions. I disagree. I have questions. They need answers. Why are you pretending that they don't exist? Because that's the other thing that the HOA president did, is when I brought up stuff, she changes the subject. This is something that people do when they don't have an answer or where they know the answer that they have is one that will paint them in a bad light. They will change the subject. And then she started into this diatribe of half-truths and full lies, because that's normal business for politicians, elected or appointed. And to CYA. And I get it. I did the same thing as a kid. I didn't steal the cookie. My brother did. It's something that we learn to avoid punishment. Except that we're only obsessed, I guess, with avoiding our own punishment and not actually with helping people who don't deserve punishment avoid punishment. So I'm concerned about facts. You fact check irrelevant things. You fact check some things. And then you don't fact check certain fundamental things. That they keep meticulous records and pay meticulous attention to things that I don't care about. And they refuse to give the same kind of attention and focus and investigative query to some of the most fundamentally transformative things about the democracy or democratic process, because we're actually a republic, that they claim they exist to defend. And then they say that we're the ones trying to undermine it because we want voter IDs. Yesterday, a coworker of mine who's originally from France showed me on his phone there's an app that France has with a barcode on it where everywhere you go, apparently, if you go into a bar, a restaurant, or whatever, they scan it. And it shows them whether or not you've been vaccinated. And I have to kind of think that that's really funny because that's pretty damn fascist. That's a la papers, please. Tickets, please. I mean, there's tickets and there's papers, but this is, you can't go and do anything you want to do unless you have this little piece of paper in your hand. And yet they think that some people, certain people, are too stupid to be able to get a voter ID, but that those people are fully capable of not only obtaining a vaccine passport, but also getting, keeping, and paying for a cell phone so that they can produce the barcode on demand. So I gotta question the motives and the outcome of this. It's not the idea. Just like like I said yesterday, I'm not opposed to vaccines per se. I'm opposed to telling everyone that they must get one. That's anti-vax and anti-mandatory vax are not the same thing. But the media is conflating them into one. And you have to ask yourself why. Next week we'll start classes, and I will tell all my students to ask questions, encourage them to do so. Because as soon as we stop asking the right questions, the answers we get won't matter. Question things. If people are legit, they will try and provide an answer. They will try and defend it. And if they deflect it or they result to ad hominem personal attacks, then you know that they are either not sure or they know that they're not correct. Discerning between truth and error is very difficult sometimes. But under these circumstances, it does give you pause, and it makes me suspicious. Also, like I told the HOA board yesterday, who are the fact checkers? There's no transparency on it, and how do I become one? Because in that case, I can't become a board member because I'm ineligible, and now I know because that guy was there, who drives around and does the inspections. But before that, they wouldn't even tell me, probably because they didn't want me to know. And they certainly don't want me to be one of them. I have this thinking suspicion that even if once I clear this up, if I run for office in my HOA governing board, these two individuals will do everything in their power to make sure I'm not chosen, for fear that I will be as petty with their landscaping as they have been with mine. This is not a new thing. Frederick Bastiat wrote in The Law that this is the normal mode of action when any administration changes from one party to another, one group to another, one faction to another, that they will immediately begin to engage in what is called legalized plunder and protract the same transactional wrongs against those who had previously wronged them before they came into power. It's very normal. It happens all throughout history. And that's what they would be afraid of, probably. And maybe that's why they're so obsessed with fact-checking certain people, certain things, and not allowing certain individuals from certain groups to share their thoughts, because they're afraid that if the tables turn in the 2022 election or at some other point, that they will have to pay for the system they created and be subject to the same treatment. What a world we live in. I'll leave you with this quote. Where is the wisdom we have lost in knowledge? Where is the knowledge we have lost in information? We have so much information that it's almost impossible to know what is wise and what is otherwise. Godspeed, good luck, and ask questions, because there's something more going on than meets the eye. And there almost always is.